I'm going live, and it says right now that we are live. Hi, I'm Bill Patton, and I'm with
Amanda Fink Moore. Hi, Bill.
yes, Amanda. And today's topic is best practices and formats for clinics,
Clinics.
group training sessions, parties, etc. Right? Um, so anyway, I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I actually did some homework and put together a little list of things for us to talk, for me anyway, to talk about. And so I think the first thing we want to do, let's cover some of the best practices and worst practices in terms of running group stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the first thing that leaps off your mind in terms of a best practice for running a clinic or a group training?
Number one in my book is to be able to identify the goal of the practice or group training. That way, everyone that comes to the clinic or signs up for the group session knows exactly, at least, about what they're going to expect. Because there are many different kinds of group training out there. And if a client comes to that class and gets something completely different than they thought, you might not see them again. So it's important to establish what you are expecting in that and what the goals of the clinic are.
Interesting. Well, and so that's a best practice if you have people who want that. So so I'm going to go point
Go ahead.
counterpoint, because I've had clinics where every Saturday that people show up, they're not really incredibly 100% interested in what's going to happen at the clinic, but they want to see their friends and have fun. And so
Sure.
they're willing
Totally
to
agreed.
go with the flow on whatever coach has. So they come, and it's a total mystery. It's a present waiting to be unwrapped and all that. But it is definitely a good, so I'll say another good practice is to know your clientele. So know your
Agreed.
clientele, know what they expect from you out of that clinic. Do they want, the format and the itinerary for the clinic to be published ahead of time so that they can mentally prepare? Or do they just kind of show up and expect the coach to just run things and go, just do it that way?
I've
So
never published anything ahead of time. I feel like you always have last minute changes in things. And it's always, at least for my anxiety based brain, that's too much for me to come up with when I come up with an outline, and then I always have to change too much of it. So I've honestly kind of gone away from pretty detailed lesson plans, because I know, at least with certain groups, that with certain drills and games work with better with certain numbers and things like that. So I've been better being able to just kind of have a general idea of maybe some of the things that group needs to work on, but then kind of going with the flow, kind of as you referenced earlier, based on who's coming, how many people I have coming, things like that, and adjusting.
yes, yes. And on the other hand, though, you might want to have a special doubles clinic where everybody knows that it's about poaching. We're going to have a poaching clinic,
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, it's going to be about lobs and overheads and how to play well. What do you do after you've lobbed? What do you do after you've hit your overhead? Those kinds of things. But yeah, so I mean, sometimes you are at a place where those people do expect that there's going to be a set program and agenda. Um, yeah, it's generally what I would do with this one particular group that you've met is I come in with a plan. I have a plan for the day. So if nobody has an idea, then we're going to do the plan that I've assembled for the group. But I always start with listening to them and saying, "Hey, what do you want to work on?" And then we get a smattering of ideas, and you can kind of tell who's being a bully and who actually represents the group. Yeah, we want to work on this. So you kind of have to suss that out, figure out who will naturally take over and always get their way, because you want to spend more time listening and making sure that you've really heard the group rather than just the one noisy person who always does what they want.
So another point of best practice, how long do you give the group to be able to tell you what they want to work on?
Yes, that's a good one. So, you came to a clinic and you saw one of my more difficult clients in at work, right? And so we started doing a certain thing, and then this person, sort of overreacting slightly, decided that, oh, no, 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 we really need to work on this one thing, and we need to do it right now, and we need to do it for the people who just arrived, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the only problem was she hadn't really heard really well what I had said that we were going to do. So, but anyway, because she was so adamant, I went with what she did. And it was a really fun little train wreck for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then everybody was like, hey, don't you think you should listen to Coach Bill? Because Coach Bill said this, right? And she kind of went, oh. And then after letting it fail for a good 5 or 10 minutes, then we brought it back to what I originally intended. So sometimes if you give people an opportunity to do that, then they trust you more, because they see if they get overbearing in their way that it's actually probably not going to work out very well.
How often do you think people tell you are able to identify what they want to work on? Or how often, when you ask that question, do you get a lot of silence?
It's probably about 50-50. And
Mhm.
also though, but that's a great question, because I think what we need to do is build in space to develop that relationship. And so, keep asking that question, keep assuming that one day it's going to click and they're going to start to understand better what they need to work on and tell you what they want.
Sure.
So, yeah, Albert Einstein said, never stop questioning.
Mhm.
It's a shorter version of a longer quote, but I think it's really important to always be curious about the growth of your players and empowering them to be able to say what they want.
Absolutely. But I think oftentimes a lot of coaches, including myself when I was starting, sometimes we'll spend time asking that question and we wait for a long time to receive an answer that we're probably not going to get yet. And there's a balance between kind of what I talk about with and what Michelle Krause talks about a lot with commanding a court, being able to tell people like where they're going to go, what they're going to do, as people take comfort in that and knowing that you're confident in delivering, and waiting to hear that stuff. Oftentimes we wait too long and then it looks like we have no game plan or no idea what we're doing, and then we lose command of the group.
And so that's a great point. And so I'm really loving this discussion. So I think the way I always preface it is I say, hey, I have a plan for today.
Mhm.
I have a plan for today, and we can just go right into my plan. But I want to open it up for a moment to see if there's something in particular anybody wants to work on today. 1, 2, 3, right?
Right.
Okay, nothing, right? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so here's what we're doing.
Right.
I mean, yeah, because it's a great point. But yeah, so you don't want to be like, okay, we're gonna get it in another minute.
Mhm.
Yes, because even when people are supposed to have like a solemn moment of silence, they can't do a minute. That's crazy. Anyway, so those are some really quick best practices, because absolutely you want to get in touch with, are your formats, are your executions going along with what your clientele wants, because that's how you're going to build a lot more loyalty. All right, so do you have a format ready to go that you really love to have in doubles or groups or team situations?
So I'm a very not live ball the game specifically, but a live ball genre based clinic person or group lesson person. I would say I think that I want to keep things moving and as at least in the direction of point play as humanly possible. Even when I'm working on a skill set,
Okay.
I try to keep it within point play. So I don't, especially when I have groups that are larger than 4, I can limit the amount of time that people are standing and waiting. And I also make sure that my feedback is concise, or at least, I mean, I think I develop a language with players, but things that I can deliver quickly so I don't stop too long and therefore keep people waiting. I think people have gotten used to a certain pace of clinic with me, probably from my cardio tennis upbringing, which I love and has really trained me really well to run, I think, successful group sessions that are both fun and people can learn something. But yeah, I would say that I do a lot of doubles point play. And I do choose, I have like, I probably have a catalog of games. I think people take comfort after a while in that there is some consistency so that they kind of know how certain games work so they can run quicker. But I can also take games, the same games, and focus on different skill sets within those games. So they can kind of seem like new drills, even though it is kind of the same format. I do think that throwing something new every once in a while is great. And it's important to keep learning new drills and games and develop a catalog. But at the same time, I think that there is something to be said too for letting players get comfortable with a certain format and being able to succeed so that I can focus on skills within those games.
Okay, perfect. And so when you said, groups of 4 or more, that brings me to a format that I like. And it's called 3 or 4 and the pro. And so generally I really love it when it's 4 and the pro because then I don't have to hit.
Right.
Because if you're the 4th, then there's kind of this built-in unfairness of whoever gets to be your partner, has this edge or whatever. But then there's also the downside of you got lobbed and you're running back and you've gone back and forth and now you've hit an overhead and now you're like and you're trying to give instructions while also completely out of breath.
Sure.
So that's less valuable for my clients. It's more, I think it's much better if the coach doesn't have to be involved in play. In fact, what I'll do is if I have a larger clinic, there's a certain, when we get to 8 people in the clinic, everybody gets a price break.
Mm-hmm.
Because 7's the worst, because that
Mm-hmm.
means I will have to play on one court and also watch another court. So they know, so they try really hard to get that 8th person so that they know that I don't have to play that day. But,
Right.
one of the great things about 3 or 4 and the pro is that you can do a lot of really quick action volley drills and you don't have to run lines or anything. You can do point play situations repeatedly
Mm-hmm.
and everybody stays in the flow nicely. And that's a really good thing. So that's one of my favorite formats. In fact, I'm going to be doing a 4 and the pro coming up soon that's being established by one of my current players. And man, this lady is a dynamo. She's one of the most active tennis players in the entire city. So
Wow.
she knows everybody, everybody knows her. And so I better take really good care of her group because there's a lot riding on that,
Sure.
And so so that's another thing too, is that when you have a certain client that is a person who gives you a lot of referrals, you really want to get to know them and what is their favorite format. All right. So you
Sure.
got
I mean,
another
but
one?
I think though that the 4, like they are great formats, but I would consider the 3 and the 4. So I would consider, at least in my eyes, I mark those. Those are the semi-private lessons for me. I think that the bigger formats are the actual group lessons or the clinics, so to speak. And like you said, there's a lot of great things about having just 4, just 3 and you on a court. Eventually, part of that can be simulated match play and things. But at the same time, I think that there's a lot of learning that can be done for, I can run, I can confidently say that I can have 6, 7 players on a court. I have odd numbers. And if I only have one court, I can do a pretty good group class on one court and still keep people kind of having those quick reaction drill plays, not having too much waiting time, and still kind of getting some skills across. It just depends on what kind of situation you have at your facility or club. Like you've mentioned how, sometimes we talk about the teaching in the club environment or the park environment, but not everyone is that. Some people are teaching privately on one court, and how do I maximize one court and still be able to run successful group classes? So it's good to
Yeah.
have all the information too.
Okay. So do you have another format that works really well on one court?
On one court with how many people?
12. 8. 9.
8. I can 8 or less. I can definitely, I would say that the most successful group lessons I've seen usually have a 6-to-1 pro ratio. I have run group classes with 8 on a court before, and no one complained about it. And I think it went well. But yeah, I think that there are a lot of bigger group games that can be run, doubles, rotational games, that can still be very, very successful and have 8 players on a court.
Okay, good. So that kind of goes into a format that I like, and I call it game day. So when I've got 8, and 9 is actually my final number for a clinic. And when I can sell players on the fact that 9 is actually a great number, then things go really well. Do they always buy into that? No.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I love about 9 is you can play some 3-on-3 games.
Sure.
And you can have a champion team of 3 and 2 competing teams of 3 against them, vying to become the new champion team.
Yeah.
And you can play what I call monkey in the middle, which is the winning team. Every time they win a point, they rotate one position clockwise.
Mm-hmm.
So you create this situation where they get not only lateral but diagonal movement up and back.
Playing triples. Mm-hmm.
And playing triples, and you have built-in transition points. So you feed a ball to someone who's moving forward, and they just really get used to moving forward well.
Agreed.
But when it comes to game day, I have 5 games that I really love, and I rarely go outside of these 5 games. And
Mm-hmm.
so if anybody who wants these as a PDF, send me your email. And if you're watching this, by the way, put who you are and what city and state or country you're in the chat. That'll be terrific. But so I have monkey in the middle, which I really love because
Mm-hmm.
it gets people moving diagonally, and it puts 2 players in a very close quarters volleying situation with each
Mm-hmm.
other.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I guess it's every day for me is game day, because most of my clinics are game based, to be perfectly honest.
Okay.
But yeah, depending on the number of people I have, I also usually have a set couple of games per that number that I try to stick to, because I know they are the most successful games.
Awesome. I'm going to run through my list, and then
Go for it.
So another game I really like, and people seem to like a lot, is stations. So you start with 4 players at the baseline, and you feed a ball, and they play it out as a doubles point, and the team that wins the point gets to start the next point at the service line. But you have to reinforce with them that they're not stuck there, that they should close.
Right.
And then if they win that next point, they come into the service boxes, and then depending on how much confidence they need, you can feed them a really nice, easy ball for a finish.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're one of the better players on the court, then you can handicap them by giving them a brutal feed, and put them in a more defensive volleying position. But and then teams win permanent points when they win all 3 points in a row, which is also really good mentally. Then another game that I like that I got from Greg Patton, we call it Cupcake, but he called it Torpedo. And so you have 3 people who hit forehands at 3 people at the net. And the idea is the ground stroker's ball should never hit the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So it teaches people to be courageous against big forehands and take their volleys out of the air, and a lot of other good things. Another great game is Attack. where you have 2 players on this side and all the rest of the players are surrounding them outside of the court, but they can all play against 2 other players at the net. And then when the larger group defeats the 2, then the other people run over and you start them with a lob. There's a lot of movement there and a lot of crazy volley action and some unexpected stuff, which is also great mentally, because when your games create a little bit of chaos, then that can help them for when something really weird happens in a match. They're able to learn how to maintain their composure. So we call that one attack. Some people call it Olympics. And then I'm at a loss. So I've got, those are 4 games really quick, and I blanked out on the 5th one. I might remember later.
All right, but
So
yeah, I think it's so funny.
game?
All the formats that, you know, they're very familiar, and we all just have different names for them.
Right. So do you have another game that you like?
I mean, I have a billion games that I like. So my most successful games that I think other coaches would benefit from is I'm pretty successful with larger groups with 7 awkward numbers. So, and most of these games are cardio based. So cardio is like, I call it torpedo top gun because that's what I learned from my boss in San Diego. I believe in cardio. It's called Desperate Housewives. I could play it with between 6 and 8 players. Two champions of the court, a line at the net pole, feeding a sky ball so that 2 players are coming in at a time, running and getting behind a high ball that they have to let bounce, playing out a point. If they win, they take the champion spot. If not, they go back in the line. So again, kind of dealing with some awkward situations, but still doing double space play. Chaos, which I believe is called Bedlam in cardio tennis, which is a 3-on-3 game. 3 people on each baseline on each side and a cone behind each team closer to the fence, and kind of like touch the fence. After a player hits a cone, they cannot come back and help their team until they've touched the cone behind their team. So not only do they work on reaction skills, but it is also kind of a brain exercise where oftentimes in tennis, players hit a ball and then they stand. They don't move to where they're supposed to go to next. So a game like that kind of trains us to go, okay, I hit a ball, I have to go do something and then get ready to hit another ball. So kind of obviously isn't exactly the same, but it replicates our need for, after I hit the ball, am I split stepping? Am I getting ready to go? Should I be coming to the net? Should I be coming behind the baseline? Things like that. And one of my other unique games that I play between 5 and 8 on a court is, again, learned it in San Diego from my boss, is running Australian doubles. I like playing it because we don't play Australian doubles a lot, and I like it. I like being able to work on singles and doubles skills in the single game, where the champion is the singles player and there are doubles players on the other side. One person at the net, one person at the baseline, feed the baseline person of the doubles team, play out a point. The doubles team beats the singles team. The net person gets to advance up, and it's rotational. Singles player gets to stay in if they win. If they win 3 in a row, they win a game. So I can go over poaching and trying to end points against the singles player quickly. I can work on the singles player, trying to keep more balls in play, lobbing, lots of interesting things. So those are a couple games off the top of my head with unique numbers and skills.
And you spurred me on, so thank you.
You got it.
Another game I like is called Kamikaze. And the way it works is that the serving team, if the net person is able to touch the return, just simply get their racket on it, then that team cannot lose that point. So it trains people to find out what is the full range of where they can go and make a volley and be very, very aggressive. So the fact that, if it just barely ticks off the end of their racket and they would have lost the point. Well, no, they don't. They're going to serve that point over again. And then there's this cumulative pressure that the returner starts to feel when they haven't successfully gotten the ball away from the net person, because they can't win a point unless they do. Right. So, and then what we'll do is one of the variations for that is that we'll say that, sometimes we'll even play it where if the net person touches the ball, then they automatically win the point. And that puts even more pressure on the returner to get to, hit a ball where the net person can't hit it. And we never talk about the net person. So, because when you talk about the net person, then people think about the net person and then they hit to the net person. So, we
Right.
talk a lot about hitting to the side tee, or we talk about lobbing to the baseline. But we never say lob the net person, because then they're going to lob them and then they're going to give up an overhead, right? We don't say hit it past the net person, because if you hit to the side tee, you're going to get that anyway. It's almost impossible for the net player to get the ball if the return has gone to the side tee.
Right.
But I wanted to get into another format really quick and then hand back to you. And this comes with a very short story. So I was running this fairly successful Friday morning clinic, and it was going quite well, and was getting very regular people showing up. There was a group of about 10 or 12 people that were always coming. And we played lots of different games and blah, 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 right? And then all of a sudden, this new lady shows up, and she says, "Oh, hey, Bill, there's nothing against, the format that you're running here. I do enjoy it, and I see that the other ladies are enjoying it. But can we try this other format?" Right? And so, imagine the reaction of most tennis pros as the new lady comes and tries to give a new format. Right? I mean, I get some internal resistance. No, I don't want to take a risk on this with somebody who's brand new to the club. So, against my better judgment, we did what she said, because she said, that everybody had fun. So we started doing this new thing, and lo and behold, everybody loved it better. So we had 6 ladies, and we had 2 at the net posts, and we had 4 that were all engaged playing, and we would play 2 points, and then everybody would switch. So you rotate one position, play 2 more points, rotate one position, play 2 points. And the thing that was amazing was that, unsolicited, some of the women that were at the net posts watching got things for the first time.
Because they were
still, they could rationally look at the situation of what happened. It wasn't happening to them. So they could see how things worked better, and then also they're kind of like foster a little more of a social aspect, because now you also have fans. You have built-in fans on the court who are oohing and awing, and
yes, and you can get those people that are waiting to stay engaged. And this is a thing with kids classes too, because you often do have bigger groups or drills where people, or games that people are waiting. So people are using, which I've always asked, if people are using their time wisely, there's a lot to learn, a lot more fun to be had. But sometimes it's not easy to keep those people, or ask those people to be engaged, even when they're not hitting the ball.
Yes. And so generally when I can, I'll have a TRX set up, and on one net, on the fence next to one net post, and then I'll have a medicine ball on the other net post, so they can work out while they're there for 2 points. Because you can get 6 reps on a TRX, or you can do some slam downs with a medicine ball, or do some kind of core rotation while you're waiting. What I find is that most people opt out of the exercise part.
Yeah. Yeah. Even in cardio, where everything is kind of, there's a ladder transition in between everything. Even that sometimes is challenging, depending on the person, to keep people doing all those activities, even though it's like, that's why, those workout, that's a workout. That's, you're here to work out. So if I can't get people to do that all the time in cardio, it might be harder if I have another format to also get them to do those things.
Exactly. All right. So do you have another format, or should I share my next one?
So, I honestly, I don't think I have a huge library of formats, because I try to keep things mainly game-based. It's either game-based or match-based. I think I only do, so you referenced in beginning kind of having a specific skill to work on. I have done skill clinics before, and I have titled them as such, saying that, listen, this clinic is not meant to be a workout. You are meant to work today. If we're working on a return, or we're working on drop shots, We're going to go over all the technical aspects of those things. We're going to each hit them. We're going to be in a line and maybe hit a couple of them or 2 lines or whatnot. So as long as I've prepared clients for that and make sure, they're signing up for the correct experience, that, I'll encourage people, if it's a shot that they need to work on, that maybe this is a class that they should sign up for. But even at the end of those classes, I'm usually, if it's an hour, I'm usually spending about, I would say 40 minutes doing technical work, and then still trying to integrate play at the end. I still think that game-based and match-based is the best. Even match-based can be a little slow. I would say that at least ladies classes, which I think are primarily most of a good chunk of our markets, the ladies are, it's challenging because they're looking for the workout and to learn something and to be social. But I would say that at least the people that I've worked with, a lot of them like the workout aspect. They want to be moving. They might not want to be, doing extra exercises on the side, but they do want to be running a lot on the court. So my cardio game-based or game-based cardio games, the drill or the actual just game-based is kind of where I'm at. Go ahead.
Awesome. So I'm going to share one more, and then I'm also going to give one more sort of best practice. So, so this is something I learned from Ken DeHart, who is a legend, and it's called skill, drill, thrill. And so generally it's good if it's about a 90-minute clinic, because you spend 15 minutes working on a skill, and that's usually in the warm-up phase. So it might be, slicing the ball back and forth, close to the net, and maybe learning to transition forward as you're warming up. And then we'll do about 30 minutes of drills. So generally it's, it can be a line drill or it can be a point play situation, but it's set up to be very active, and we're not so worried about the outcomes of things. And, there's not a lot of coaching, but, if the group seems to be failing at one particular aspect, then we're going to have to stop and we're going to have to break that down for a moment. And then we go into 45 minutes of coached play. So 15 minutes of skills, 30 minutes of drills, and then 45 minutes or more of playing doubles while being coached. But then the expectation is that they're going to try to execute the skills that have now been drilled, and now we want to see them get the thrill of doing those in competition. And then, since there's this tremendous boom going on with tennis right now, and some people say, and I don't know, this could be fact checked, but some people say that more people have started playing tennis in the last 2 years than the entire pickleball population.
That I believe is true.
Okay, now that means that there's a tremendous amount of 1.0, 1.5, 2.0 players in the game. And our job is to get them to 2.5 as soon as possible. So I had this clinic that was called Something Resembling Doubles. And so we actually had a little group chat. So we had our little group chat. So and the title of the group chat was Something Resembling Doubles. And so we would get some newbies in there, and they didn't know how to serve. So I would serve for them. And then they would play the point out. And then those that had some serve practice, they could attempt one serve, but if they didn't make it, then I made a feed.
Did you use different balls?
No.
You didn't use orange or green dot balls?
I did not.
Oh,
and
man.
That was because my players did not want to do that.
Really?
Really?
Because they are already they already think that those balls are.
Well, we're not going to argue about. We're not, because I'm all about using transition balls at times, but not when my audience is vehemently against them.
Oh, I understand.
Okay. So, but those of us who are seasoned tennis players, tennis coaches, meaning like almost bald or have lots of gray right there, right? We can hearken back to a day when dead tennis balls were your best friend. So there's this phrase called "deader the better."
Right.
Yeah. Hey, go get the deader the betters out.
Yeah.
And So we would train newer players with dead tennis balls because it's had the same sort of effect.
Right.
I'll get the balls that have been used quite a bit out to
Mhm.
work with my newer players so that they don't feel, because unfortunately some people feel insulted by the idea of using a ball designed for children.
Well, that's the well, that what that thing that you just said is the marketing problem because it isn't. Those balls aren't designed.
Okay,
Yeah, they're not
but
designed for
in
children.
yes,
They're
but
designed
in
in
the
general.
battle, I know, we can argue a little bit. We can
No, I'm
argue.
not arguing. I'm just
No,
that it's just the big conception. It's a marketing issue. It's
well,
how go ahead.
yes, in the battle of perception versus reality, perception always wins. So so you have to, this is an important part of being a great pro, is realizing which battles you can win immediately
Mhm.
and which ones you have to have a long-term pitched battle of winning the hearts and minds
Right.
of your people. And it could take a long time. But
Yep.
anyway, so that transition though of them, not having the pressure of having to serve and embarrass themselves,
Mhm.
to then they have to take one attempt, and when they make their first serve, we're going to go, yeah, we're going to have a party because somebody made the first successful serve of their lives, right? To then becoming in, a couple of weeks or a couple of months, a competent server. And then what happened was, over the period of about 2 months, then I changed the name on the group chat to the Doubles Clinic. And there was this collective celebration because everybody in the group had become a legitimate 2.5 doubles player.
Which is very
So
exciting.
so anyway, all right. So do you have anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
No, I didn't know what else you wanted to get into. I mean, the only other point I had is kind of something I referred earlier into the importance of being able to command a court. I think
Okay.
that in addition to being able to get, teaching across, it is really important that you're able to tell people exactly where they're going, what to expect very quickly. You're going to have to repeat yourself probably multiple times because maybe two people were listening to you and not the other four. And being able to clearly tell people where feeds are going, how many tries do they get on a feed, things like that. Because I think oftentimes we get caught up in webs just in that aspect. And once that happens, then it makes it really hard to enjoy the rest of the group lesson or be able to teach because we don't perform these basic things very well. It's really important to be able to do that just as much as to be able to instruct.
Yes. And it's important that people know that if they repeatedly hit balls in the net, that can really junk up the drill,
We
right?
try not to shame people for that, but it's not great, but
Oh, it was the ball in the net that junked up the drill, not the person. Let's not personalize it.
okay.
So, does everybody see that ball that Jessica just hit chunked up the drill? Does everybody see that? No, I mean, we're not gonna point it out that way, but it is important to let people know what makes drills succeed better, and how
Mhm.
and there will be less stopping for safety reasons
Right.
and whatnot. So, no, I'm not generally in the business of humiliating my clients in front of everybody, unless, of course, they've taken a shot at me first, which is,
Which sometimes is the case. Okay.
yeah, you've seen that you've
I
seen
have,
you've
yeah, and
seen
it
it.
happens to everybody, and there
Yeah.
are some, certain people that are, they're fine laughing at themselves and things people are but yeah, we can never assume that about yeah, that's why, again, another thing dynamic about group situations is that you're dealing with different people that have different personalities. They want different things out of the practice they're about to receive. It's a really, really challenging thing to be able to do, like I was saying. It takes a pretty good tennis professional in different categories to be able to deliver a successful group setting lesson clinic thing.
And that's a wrap. That right there was your finish right there, because that was very
Okay.
well said. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Well, Amanda, my friend, thank you for coming on to talk about this stuff. And, can't wait to see questions, comments, observations from people, and let us know where you're watching this stuff from.
Awesome, Bill. Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to chat with you.
All right. Take good care.
Bye.